Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. My name's Andrew, and I'm part of the CaptivateIQ team. And today I'm joined by Davis and Dama, who are joining me from the Alexander Group, and we're going to be talking about AI use cases for revenue growth. We're going to get into some introductions in just a moment, and tell y'all a little bit about ourselves and where we're calling in from. But before that, I do have a couple of housekeeping items that I wanted to share with everyone. Today's session is going to be recorded, and we'll provide the recording via email after we get it back and package it up. Our ask is that you use the chat to drop in any questions or comments that you have throughout the session. We will be taking a look at the chat, and at the end, we're going to be saving time for Q&A. And so we've got a team that's helping us aggregate those questions, and we'll be taking those down at the end of the session today. And then the last call out is if you find the content riveting, engaging, insightful, take the opportunity to follow CaptivateIQ and the Alexander Group and my colleagues Dama and Davis on LinkedIn. We're constantly posting updates, insights as well. So take the opportunity to follow us after the session. With that, we're going to go ahead and get into some brief introductions. And as I mentioned, I'm joined today by Dama and Davis from the Alexander Group. And Dama, I'll turn it over to you for an introduction a bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Deima Tankus. I'm a consultant at the Alexander Group within our analytics and research practice. I'm joining you guys from Chicago, and I have dedicated a lot of time, along with Davis, over the last 18 months to this topic of artificial intelligence and how implementing different types of AI can transform the commercial organization. So I'm very excited to be talking to you guys today. And yeah, thank you, Andrew, for having us on.
Awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to go through that.
Sure. Yeah, hey everyone, Davis Giedt, Director of the Analytics and Research Practice at Alexander Group. I've been with the firm for about 12 years. If you don't know us, we are a revenue growth management consulting firm. We help companies, large and small, think about how they can improve their marketing, sales, and service strategy and operations, and grow revenue top line through go-to-market transformation and improvements. A big part of that is AI. As Dama mentioned, we focus a lot of our time researching and thinking about different use cases as it relates to AI. We're really excited to share some use cases and stories and data with you on how organizations are using AI for productivity, sales productivity, and compensation and beyond today.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for taking the time to walk through that. I follow the Alexander Group closely, whether I'm researching new topics or trying to bring in some insights for change that we're driving within the business. I'm constantly taking a look at the content on y'all's website. So I'd encourage the group here to take a look at that as well. As I mentioned at the top of the call, my name's Andrew Morales. I'm part of the strategy and operations team here at CaptivateIQ. I've been here for about a year. We are here to help companies drive efficiency and realize the behaviors that their incentive programs are trying to drive. A bit about me: I am a father, a husband, a son, a brother. I'm super passionate about forecasting and process design. So from a RevOps landscape and standpoint, any of those topics are ones that I will gladly spend a lot of time talking about, learning about. So please take the time to connect with me or reach out if those are things that you're interested in discussing in a bit more detail as well. But enough about us. Let's get into some of the topics we're going to be talking about today. Want to set some expectations for our session today. Our goal is really to hopefully arm you all with some actionable insights that you can take away into your business and potentially put in practice today. Or I know a lot of us are actually going through annual planning right now. And so as we're thinking about the large bets that we're making for next fiscal year, these are things that are timed perfectly for you to consider as you're thinking about budgeting, large projects, large initiatives, and going through annual planning. And so again, our expectation is that we're serving up some actionable takeaways that you can implement within your businesses to drive growth, efficiency, and productivity as well. To get us started for our topics today, we're actually going to rewind just a little bit to the beginning of the year. And we held a very similar conversation about AI use cases and driving revenue growth. And I want to check in to see how did we actually do with what we talked about at the beginning of the year. So we talked about maximizing the engaged selling time of our sellers by using AI selling assistants. We talked about giving sellers time back to focus on value-added activities using things like account planning. I think I referenced a specific example of saving hours compared to my head of sales using ChatGPT to build an account plan. We also talked about empowering RevOps with clean and unified data, using technologies like Outreach or Gong to capture activity and data to help create clean data for RevOps functions to be able to use throughout the year. And then the last one is boosting customer experiences through AI service interactions. For those of us that were at Dreamforce, there was a lot of discussion around Agentforce, and we saw that as a potential area this year that is a growth opportunity for AI. Davis, Daima, y'all just did quite a bit of research, which we're going to get into in just a moment, but how did we do with our predictions? Were we wrong? Were we right?
Yeah, maybe I'll start off, given I sort of was part of that webinar with you back in the winter, Andrew. And I think back then we had some pretty lofty expectations for what AI would deliver as it relates to productivity improvements and transformation in the sales side. And in general, as expected, I think results have been slightly lower than what we had thought of back in the winter. Now, having said that, there's some recent data that just came out from our 2025 Sales Pulse survey, which is a survey of almost 100 chief revenue officers. And it showed that these three areas, actually, AI sales assistants, boosting customer experience through using AI for automation, and also empowering RevOps with improved data or data cleanliness, data organization, were three of the sort of highest positive ROI areas. So the first one on maximizing engaged sales time with AI sales assistants, it was framed a little bit differently in terms of how we asked folks. And what they told us was that effectively they're seeing a pretty big productivity, measurable productivity improvement as it relates to deploying AI sales assistants, like you said, for account planning, prioritization, targeting, and engaging with existing customers for cross and upselling, et cetera. It remains to be seen whether that's having a measurable impact on actually increasing engaged selling time, or if it's just making the available engaged selling time, so high value customer facing time, more effective for the average sales rep. If I had to guess, it's probably more of the latter. It's hard to get more engaged selling time. People are busy, but what you can do is make sure that you're uber prepared as a sales rep to drive a good conversation ultimately towards productivity uplifting activities as a result of the engaged selling time. Maybe I'll pause there and let Daima jump in with anything else that she wants to share.
Yeah. There's actually something else from that survey that I found interesting, which is, we're not seeing a huge difference in the kinds of use cases that are being invested in. Some differences here and there, and Davis mentioned some of the ones that are getting the best returns. But what we are seeing is, a year ago, about 60% of companies were investing in 5 or more different use cases. And now in October 2024, that's flipped. And 60% are now investing in fewer than 5 use cases. So I think this past year, and hopefully a lot of you resonate with this, was really a year of experimentation. And we've heard this a lot. Either companies trying to figure out how to do the most with one major tool that they invested in and get the most use cases out of it, like trying to figure out ideal prompt engineering for your ChatGPT and Copilot, or how to really use Einstein for Salesforce users. Or companies were trialing a wide number of different new and kind of relatively magical tools. And over the last 12 months, trying to weed out what's actually been driving results versus like what tools overpromise and underdeliver. And I think from our conversations with a lot of sales leaders, what has really driven significant uplift from AI have been the ones that have really peel back the layers of what is wrong with my process, or to do this thing that I want to do, what am I going to need to change? And kind of rolling back the sleeves and really looking at process and looking at how they acquire and use data, turning more to maybe machine learning solutions to first get their, sales forecasting and opportunity modeling and customer segmentation correct, and then using these inputs to feed a number of strategic decisions. Only after they do this do they really get good use of their Gen AI tools. So that's where I've seen sales leaders have the most success. Andrew, what do you think from a practitioner standpoint? What are you seeing?
I mentioned in my intro that process is something that I'm super passionate about. My team is always, developing process maps, and we're looking at handoff step by step between each of our team members or organizations. And that really resonates with me quite a bit. The improvements that we've seen internally is where we've taken the time to deeply understand our processes and process mapping them out, like actually understanding what are the handoffs between the different steps in the process. And then once we do that, we're able to identify inefficiencies or waste within our process, and then what technologies can help us bridge or reduce the waste within those processes. So that definitely resonates quite a bit with me in terms of how we're seeing and maximizing. And I think that the focus on less also goes back to prioritization and understanding what is going to drive the most outcome, but what technologies are mature enough to augment the processes that are in place today. So both those definitely resonate quite a bit with me.
Great.
Any other thoughts on the other two, boosting customer experience or clean unified data, before we transition into our poll?
Maybe number 5 or the bottom right one here in terms of clean unified data. That was another one that showed up quite a bit. This is a constant struggle for businesses in terms of figuring out ways to democratize their data across RevOps, marketing, sales, and service. This is one that we do a lot of work with folks on, just thinking about how they can improve their data access and data flows, and then ultimately turn those into insights about right to win and target customers, propensity to buy, attribution, et cetera. And we've seen pretty big uplift as it relates to how AI tools are supporting that. I think in part, it's giving people motivation to get the job done. There's a tool that can save 20% of your time. You still have to know what's in your data. You still need to know where the pitfalls are and whatnot. But if you've got a tool that can set you up to save, a material amount of time, it not only sort of lights the fire, but it also motivates you and helps you through the process.
I think it's actually pretty critical from a data lens. I think that one of the things that we strive to be quite a bit is data-driven decision-making organizations. But even taking a step back, data-informed decision-making teams it depends on you having access to, and then the cleanliness of the data is important as well. So if you've taken the time to actually map out your processes, thinking through then how are you capturing that at scale, and then going back to that productivity conversation, Davis, that you mentioned, like not asking your team members to manually input that, where can you introduce technology to capture that automatically, is where we see a lot of the benefit here for us at CaptivateIQ, and where I've seen it in previous lives as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal for sales comp data as well, and related, productivity, performance, headcount, sales compensation information, which I think is maybe a good segue to our next section here, Andrew, without giving it away.
Sounds good. All right, folks. So we've been going for about 15 minutes here. We figured that we'd get a bit of engagement from all of you, and introduce a poll, which is going to tee up a lot of the research that Davis and Deima are going to be walking us through here in just a moment. So Davis and Deima, I'd love if you could just kind of walk us through the intent behind some of these questions, or an overview. We'll transition into some of the results live, and that'll kickstart us right into the conversation about the research y'all did.
Yeah, sure. So, this is based on some survey results that we have already gathered. We're going to hold those back because we don't want to lead the witness, but we'd love to hear from you. I believe this is a select all that apply. Which of these workflows are you currently enabling, or do you plan to enable with AI sometime in the next year or so? Just give us a sense if of which ones are relevant to your business, and then we can all see the results as a group. So maybe we'll give everybody a minute or two. We can wait until 18 minutes after for folks to fill this in, and then we'll go from there. All right.
All right, we'll give everyone just another minute, and
I see we're getting some results in.
Yeah, some results are coming in.
All right, we'll go ahead and move over. And so these are the results from everybody in the audience on the survey that we just prompted. Would love a reaction from the two of you, how this ties out into what we're going to show next and talk about for the rest of the session.
Yeah, Dame, I mean, looks like compensation analytics and reporting is the top one, followed by admin and then plan communication. That seems pretty consistent. What's maybe a little bit lower, but still somewhat prevalent is the plan design elements. So offering options on plan design to get started. Oh, I think we may have some audio issues. Yeah, what's interesting.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, just came back. Go ahead, Dama.
No, these are very, very well aligned to our the survey that we've done recently. Some reporting, which is going to inform some of the topics that we covered today. Yeah, I think honestly the main 3 or 4 are really the ones that we see both in practice as what companies are implementing, and also where companies are planning on making those AI bets.
Yeah, the analytics and reporting to me is no surprise. That's been around for a little while, particularly on the machine learning side. And now, to the extent that folks are getting more sophisticated about it, using generative AI to write code that can ultimately run, regression or more advanced modeling exercises. At Alexander Group for many years, we've used Monte Carlo simulations and similar types of simulations to model out cost based on different scenarios as it relates to compensation plan implementation. And that's sort of a little brother to machine learning, if you will. That's been a popular one. On the administration side, we're seeing a lot of sort of early use of chatbots and other generative AI features to not only support your average admin person trying to answer questions on behalf of sales reps, but also in some cases turning those features directly towards sales reps so they can get basic questions answered about their plan calculations and interpreting different elements of the plan, what's the status of their payout, et cetera. And it's sort of similar on the communicating plans to reps. It's a very similar function using generative AI features to explain in simple, clear language what different elements of the plan mean to a sales rep.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
let's go ahead
and
let's go ahead and take it into the research that y'all did. And I know we're getting some engagement in the chat, and we are definitely going to be connecting the dots between the research, some of this data, and really prescriptive workflows that the Alexander Group has seen in their research. So Davis and Dama, would love your perspective on an overview of the research, what it's telling us, and that'll segue us into the rest of the conversation.
Dama, go ahead. And do you want to share a little bit about this slide, sort of how we collected the information?
Sure. Yeah, so this is a survey that we run twice a year. It's a compensation trends focused survey that we've included an AI module over the last kind of 3 cycles. And something that we see is this is kind of across all of these different sales compensation workflows. We're asking about, what portion of companies are planning to use AI, just to gauge kind of awareness about the different tools, how many are currently using AI, and then how many, they don't have it in their plans. So what you can see between our January and our June results in 2024 is overall awareness of AI across all these workflows is increasing. It's increased quite a bit in just 6 months. At the same time, the actual adoption is really limited. We have about 1 in 5 companies are currently enabling one of these workflows with AI. And a lot of that is concentrated in, honestly, the responses that you guys gave and what Davis talked about in the last slide, which is analytics and reporting, kind of leveling that up with more machine learning, more advanced machine learning techniques, sales comp, cost modeling. Again, the running Monte Carlo simulations, but maybe using some more varied inputs and enriched data to get better predictions. And then also on the planned communication front, this is one area where it's relatively easy to enter into the world of AI because Gen AI is something that is pretty easy to take up. A lot of the time you're talking to a chatbot, or ask ChatGPT how you can communicate this plan to different kind of seller personas, and you can get something spit out that doesn't require a lot of engineering. So these 3 are some areas that we're seeing a lot more uptake than some of the other comp workflows.
Yeah, and I mentioned this already, but maybe a little bit more detail on the using ChatGPT or generative AI features to interact with sales reps. In some cases, it's not necessarily like replacing or completely writing from scratch what a administration person would reply to a sales rep. It's just giving them a prompt that's 80% done or a piece of text that's 80% of the way there that they can then modify and share with a sales rep. So it increases their ability to service questions, 50%. Think of it that way, in terms of their efficiency. And it also standardizes the way that you're interacting with salespeople to a greater degree.
Yeah, I would imagine that some of these compensation documents can be long, right? And we've seen it here at CaptivateIQ. And so being able to parse through that information, tease out like the related information more consistently and in a format that's more consistent would absolutely, for our comp team, improves the productivity, ability to answer questions quickly, and then not having to come through, remember every single component of each of those plans.
Absolutely. Great. Let's move forward and we can talk a little bit about how sort of comp tools ultimately drive seller productivity. So we've talked a lot about how to drive plan clarity already, sort of figuring out ways to use generative AI and other features to make the plans more clear. And in part, that starts with the design phase. We can get into that in a little bit in terms of how you can use generative AI features to simplify or gut check designs or offer you different options as it relates to different plan designs. And then optimizing the employee experience is key as well. So just thinking about how can you get questions answered faster? How can you design plans that are more sort of aligned to sales reps, but also to helping your compensation administration folks operate the plans more clearly and actually understand exactly what's been designed and created, aligned to strategy. So maybe let's go to the next slide. We could talk about it in a little bit more detail. And Deima, do you want to jump in here?
I'll take it away. So I want to take maybe a half step back of why are we talking about sales compensation in the first place when, in the last slide that we saw, compensation workflows are still pretty limited in terms of their AI use cases. The reason we're talking about sales compensation is that it's the biggest line item within sales expense. So, on average, compensation takes about 60% of the sales budget. So we want to make sure that it's used efficiently and that it is effectively generating revenue. Sales compensation is also the biggest motivator for sales reps to go out there and grow your revenue. So your prerogative as revenue leaders and compensation leaders is to make sure that your sales compensation program, just like David said, effectively aligns your strategic growth goals with something that motivates and incentivizes reps to execute within reasonable cost limits. So to that end, you're going to want to create plans that are motivating and that reps can understand so that they're well set up to reach their goals and their quotas. And our point of view throughout these use cases is not really going to be AI first. It's really going to be more process first, with a large focus on how AI can improve that process. So same goes for using sales compensation to impact rep productivity. So our first use case is around plan communication to really drive home the point of how sales actions will lead to payouts, both at the start of the plan and then at any point that questions might come up. So at the start, once you're rolling out a plan or introducing a rep to a new plan, you could be using a generative AI tool like DeepBrain, which basically takes in a PDF, analyzes the content, builds a script, slaps a talking avatar onto an instructional video, which helps some reps basically better intake that information. It also makes it a little bit more flexible if you're communicating the plan to different geographies so that you can easily just plug in a different language. Or you can gamify plan attainment with a tool like Attensi, which helps reps play with different plan elements to understand again how different actions lead to different payouts. Or you could, on the very basic scale, you can develop case studies using a tool like ChatGPT to basically highlight different plan attainment scenarios, or like I said, generate a description for different kinds of sellers.
I like the first one a lot, Deima. That's really interesting because it takes away the game of telephone from the plan communication element, which is really key, especially when you're talking about larger businesses, right? Where you've got thousands and thousands of sales reps. You've got, in some cases, probably upwards of 50, 60, 70 people that are in the compensation design administration group that are all trying to grapple with the different plans that have been designed for the different roles. And you've got different geographies. So you're now translating in the local language, because we know generative AI tools are pretty effective at translating, word for word. So that you can communicate those plans, and you're just increasing the scale as well. So you're taking the onus off of the plan administration, plan design folks for communicating those elements out. You can also track really carefully whether or not sales reps have watched the videos in full, and even give them quizzes at the end to ensure that they're actually understanding what they're being told. It's a pretty powerful tool and reasonably easy to get set up.
Yeah, and I think scale is the name of the game when it comes to AI. I agree. It's scaling your content across different geographies. It's scaling one form of content into different formats, and then professionalizing and unifying the way that you're communicating plans to reps. So definitely agree with that. And the second little blurb on this page is that you don't just want to focus your efforts to when the plans first get rolled out, but also get reps really quick answers about their plans, or how they're going to get credited for a deal, for example, in an ongoing manner, which could be done through a GPT that connects to your compensation plan data. That's kind of the most basic model. You can build on it and have it connect to pipeline or connect to different machine learning models. This kind of chatbot is something that we're actually seeing a lot of chatter around, either as maybe like a small language model that ingests a set of PDFs and answers a rep's targeted questions, kind of like an enhanced search, or that actually connects to multiple systems and is able to answer more dynamic questions that can tell a rep, for example, based on your pipeline and your likelihood of conversion, you're likely going to achieve X% of your quota by the end of the month. This one is not really common practice today, and it's actually much more difficult to engineer than it sounds. But it is a major focus for companies that are looking to improve rep productivity through sales compensation and really drive home that motivation.
There's also a lot of interest. I mean, we've seen interest from hedge funds, PE firms, and internally finance folks in trying to understand and predict what percentage of reps are going to make quota based on all of the opportunities in the pipeline, and then tools like this can ultimately inform management as well in terms of where the business is heading. So it's not only just a sales rep focused coaching tool and guidance and reporting dashboarding, but it can also actually help management sort of see into the future and decide where they want to head with the business. And one thing, we've mentioned a couple of tools already here, some of them sort of more generalized, some of them more specific. we're not in the business of recommending any specific tools. But we've found these and have done research on them just because we found them to be sort of interesting for the specific use case.
Yep.
Great.
Let's move into the second use case in this module. And the use case that we're going to highlight here is improving the employee experience. Now, what does this mean? Mainly this means that reps get credited correctly and paid out on time, and that they feel like they're getting fairly compensated for their actions. So idea gets really hairy in general, but even more so if your company doesn't have a unified compensation system or is going through some kind of M&A activity and wants to make sure that sellers don't feel that additional stress and uncertainty when it comes to getting paid correctly and fairly and on time. One of the use cases that I wanted to mention here was a company that had a decentralized model that had dealerships all over Europe and was having an absolute nightmare of a time trying to manage the sales compensation program across different geographies with different pay philosophies. And they turned to an AI-enabled SPM vendor that, first of all, unified comp administration to a single platform, and then also went one step further in the employee experience category by understanding how sales reps wanted to get their payouts and creating little nudges along the way to say, oh, you're X step away from attaining your next big payout. And they actually saw a huge shift in, one, the number of sales reps that were actively using the tool. They got to, I think, over 90%. And they were also able to attribute a double-digit increase in unit sales to this process. So they were able to use these AI-generated nudges that set the right personalized incentives at the right time to get their sellers to basically achieve their set goals. So I'll take a little pause here before we go on to the... Yeah, go ahead.
I was just curious, as you think about optimizing the employee experience, like those AI nudges are helpful, like in the moment and stuff as well. How do you all think about, or what maybe came up in some of the research that you're doing around employees being able to run different scenarios based on how they're performing through the year or where they're focusing the year? What I imagine is something like, oh, a specific opportunity or account that I break into at a specific size. What is then the impact to my compensation as a result of doing that?
Yeah, this is one area where I'm seeing a lot of specifically SPM vendors trying to build into their product portfolio of being able to create these chatbots that again say based on pipeline, based on a number of different inputs, where am I going to land at the end of the month, or how am I going to get to my quota? And this is one, again, going back to the ongoing communication and chatbot use case. It's very difficult to execute today, and it requires a lot of engineering. And one of the companies that we talked to about this, they're one of the biggest tech companies in the world, and this is one use case that they're really focusing on to try to get their sellers really good focused understanding of, you close this next deal, here's how that's going to impact, or to get to your quota for the month, here are the couple of accounts that you're going to want to go after based on conversion probabilities and account health scores. So there's definitely headway being made in the space. It's definitely a kind of leading edge case.
I think there's some pretty serious prompt engineering that needs to go into that to make it effective, which is why it's maybe, only something that the largest tech companies or largest companies are focused on right now, given they have the horsepower to be able to do that. But we expect that to get a lot simpler over the next 1 to 2 years. And this type of service offering will become more tangible to your sort of, small, mid, medium, large size company. All right. Maybe we can move forward to the next section here, and I can just intro it. We talked a lot about clean, accurate data. We haven't talked about it more specifically in the context of compensation too much, but we'll get into that a little bit. So first of all is figuring out, how do you get your data clean? How do you get it annotated? How do you connect it to different sources, et cetera? And then the second thing is just thinking about design simulations. So on the plan design side, what are different options that you can take and how do they align to strategy using more of a generative AI feature? And cost modeling, which is more of the traditional classical AI using machine learning and predictive modeling techniques to understand, given different revenue growth scenarios or margin scenarios or whatever your performance KPIs are, what do you expect the payouts to be for your compensation team or for your compensation eligible roles at the different levels of performance? So maybe we can jump forward to the next slide, and I'll let Deima talk through this specific case example.
Sounds good. Yeah, so one of the biggest issues that comm teams face is data analytics and reporting. And if you remember, it's the #1 workflow where companies are actively using AI today. And the #2 workflow is actually cost modeling and design simulation. So we're going to focus on these two in this module. I think the main takeaway for you for this section, and I'll give it up front, is that you need a good data foundation in order to make any AI generated or AI supported insights make sense. So having clean and accurate data is non-negotiable for sales compensation and for RevOps. And AI can help really both in managing the process of ingesting data and then performing a number of data transformations to clean incorrect data. So I'll give two examples. What the second one is on this slide, but I also wanted to mention a key place where data ingestion breaks down, which is when busy humans are tasked with data entry. And when I say busy humans, I mean your sales reps. We hear from reps all the time and time again, that the last thing that they want to do is update CRM. And because of that, if you don't have systems in place that then cross-reference a bunch of other sources like LinkedIn and Zoom info and Apollo and emails and call transcripts, you're likely going to have a bad data problem in your pipeline, which is going to throw off your forecast, going to throw off any next best action recommenders and any other AI tools to help your reps succeed. So the good thing is that all of these AI tools are popping up that are meant to improve seller productivity by using something called natural language processing to basically scrape meetings and emails and even things like social media posts for those next steps and for key kind of customer information or key customer updates, and then translate those snippets of information into basically CRM update suggestions so that all reps have to do is like click approve update and not need to go and log everything themselves. The second example is data unification. So this is the example on the slide here. So even if your CRM is perfectly up to date, chances are it's not the only place that you're storing your data. And this was the case of the telecom company that's shown here. And that was running into a lot of issues keeping up with their disconnected data systems as they grew. So they were originally using disconnected Excel workbooks, reports from finance, CRM, other databases, and it was a pain to basically reconcile all this information every year. And then they turned to their SPM vendor and said, hey, we want to centralize everything. We want to be able to automate this reconciliation process, and we want to make it easy for us to grow. And this vendor had an AI ELT tool, which is extract, load, and transform data. That was really good at picking up on data similarities across these different data sources, and then helped extract the necessary information from the different sources, identify those connection points to then load everything into one table, and then quickly fix and transform inconsistencies in things like spelling and things like level of magnitude issues, rounding errors, all these things that take a really long time for humans to go and clean themselves. So this company went from referencing a bunch of these standalone files to then creating a data lake that is, accurate, it's easy to query, and then it can be relied on as a source of truth for any and all compensation decisions. And then the first 6 months that they were deploying the system, they saw 100% accuracy in the data that was flowing through the model. So investing in this tool was a very powerful decision that is actually going to help for growth in the years to come.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that a tool like this, again, I'm thinking about it from the more sort of where do you get started level. in a lot of cases, tools like this can be used to just identify inconsistencies in the data. So you don't have to have an analyst sifting through, raw data for days on end. You're using a tool to identify. It's not necessarily going to decide what to do with that information, but it's going to flag issues and then allow an analyst or somebody else to decide what you want to do with it. And ultimately working with your engineering team to restructure how different fields of data are connected together or not connected together, to make the entire thing a little bit more seamless.
And I think what's interesting here as well is, as a takeaway that I've seen for myself and my teams, here at CaptivateIQ and in former lives as well, is, at companies that we work at, we have various data policies: who's got access to what data, who doesn't have access to specific data. Our, data engineering teams or analyst teams might have a prioritization mechanism, and trying to get some of this work into their queue might take some time. So I think going back to what Daima had talked about at the beginning is understanding our processes. We know that there's a challenge in some of our extract, transform, load process, mapping out what it is that you need to get out of that, and then identifying some of the technologies that can help you do some of those things. So Tableau has ETL capabilities within it that you don't need to be able to write SQL queries yourself to be able to do that, and has some NLP. There's a number of tools that are out there that can help you as an individual that maybe might not have that engineering background, or the team might be busy or in a prioritization mode, that you can leverage to use to help you move forward and take advantage of unifying, cleaning your data to set you up for your internal processes and drive success with what you're doing as well. But I would go back to those, understanding your core processes and then kind of mapping out where's the gap today, what are some of the challenges you need to solve, and then finding the right fit within a tool or technology.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And our next use case here for compensation team efficiency is about funneling this data into then easy to access insights on how to design your plans, design your territories, model different outcomes. And this is where machine learning in particular gets really useful, because it allows machines to run millions of variations of input variables and outcome scenarios. It's impossible for a human to do and quickly. One example of this that we saw is a company that used a territory optimization tool that takes in a number of constrained variables. So what are your geographic limits? What are your segment breakpoints, for example? And then runs these scenarios in the background and optimizes for some key objectives, and then outputs the desired number of territories, and then even goes as far as to rank, even in each category, the accounts by their propensity to buy score. So this allowed their sellers to appropriately cover high opportunity accounts, and then also save a lot of time for the compensation team that was spent manually, redrawing territories every year. And there are loads of applications of this in compensation plan design as well, running scenarios of basically how changing some plan mechanics, for example, will impact performance.
Fantastic. I know we're...
I did want to...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's all right.
I was going to ask a question, but I think you're trying to say that we should move it along.
Yeah, I was just watching the clock, and we might want to move to the next poll here and talk through RevOps use cases. So I can jump into it. So let's think about it as a group. Which of these, similar to the comp one that we asked before, which of these RevOps workflows are you currently enabling, or do you plan to enable sometime over the next year with AI? And so this is multiple choice, or excuse me, not multiple, select all that apply as well. So we'll give everybody a minute or so until 46 after the hour to fill this one in. All right, seeing a few results come in. We'll give everybody maybe another minute to fill it out. All right, seeing some more responses coming in here. Let's see. All right, last chance to fill out, everybody. Here, just another 10 or 15 seconds, and then we'll jump into the results. Looking like some interesting results so far. Great. Okay, Andrew, let's, yeah, here we go. All right, so taking a look at the results, interesting that there is less focus on enabling anything as it relates to AI on RevOps, so a little over 50%. So it sounds like there's, among this group, there's a little bit more sophistication on the compensation workflows side of things, which is interesting. Doesn't necessarily tie with what we've seen in our results, but is interesting nonetheless. Among the use cases that folks are focused on, certainly customer intelligence tools for sales reps. We talked about that at the beginning as a key differentiator in terms of driving rep productivity. So giving sales reps the assistance and information they need about their customers on a daily basis, a regular basis. Another top one would be automation for updating CRM. Deima talked a lot about the ability to sort of improve data quality and auto-update CRM systems, which can save sales reps and RevOps folks a boatload of time. And then sort of a somewhat close third is coaching and guidance tools for sales reps. Pretty common. We see tools like Gong or Clary being able to sort of coach sales reps on a regular basis based on what they're saying in calls and how they're interacting over email with different types of customers and whatnot. Those tend to be pretty powerful as well for first-line managers in improving their ability to track and manage to what sales reps are doing on a regular basis. I don't know, Damon, anything else stick out to you on here that's worthy of a little bit of conversation?
Yeah, I'm not really surprised that there's not a lot of uptake within these RevOps workflows. I think that's somewhat consistent with our broad poll results from our last couple of surveys, where a lot of the use cases that require a lot of that thinking about process and a lot of data, a lot of these tools that are popular within this poll here, a lot of them exist as a third-party vendor has a ready solution for you to kind of plug in. But some of these other ones like sales forecasting, territory design, segmentation, a lot of these are done in-house and require some kind of data science capabilities and really good, clean data process, which I think is one of the barriers that is stopping a lot of companies from investing in AI. The companies that tend to actually employ AI tools for these use cases do see an ROI pretty quickly because they're able to then, like I said before, like scale their, something like sales forecasting will impact a lot of different decisions. It's just that first getting AI set up for sales forecasting is a really difficult process. Once you iron it out, it's actually really, really impactful. But in terms of where the overall market stands, it doesn't surprise me.
Very cool. Maybe we'll look quickly at some of our results here. You'll see a slightly different set of options. We just wanted to trim the options for the poll here to make it easier to fit it all on one screen. But you see content generation is top, forecasting is also a top one as well, and virtual assistants is a close third there as well. A lot of focus on lead scoring and lead improvement, pricing, and then cleansing and data organization is just under a quarter of companies are sort of focused on that as well. So there's a lot of overlap between what we saw, slightly different. I would say it's a slightly different sort of set of results, but certainly some overlap as well. So maybe let's jump, in the interest of time, let's jump forward to the next section here and talk about a couple different things. And I think maybe, Deima, we'll focus on one of the two use cases that we have here just to make sure we save 5 minutes at the end. First one is mapping out your opportunities with machine learning. So using machine learning to understand where your right to win is and what sales opportunities you have with different types of customers. And then the last one, which is probably the most relevant to folks, is just thinking about how to use AI to improve the sales forecasting process and outcomes as it relates to RevOps. So maybe let's jump forward to that one, the forecasting. We can talk through that.
Yeah. So this one is a case of basically improving sales forecasting process with a mix of machine learning and some of that natural language processing. And this use case is kind of similar to the data ingestion use case in that it also targets where data ingestion might be breaking down or incorrect. In this case, one RevOps leader that we were talking to mentioned that they felt like they were wasting resources by having a RevOps rep sit in on, hour-long weekly forecast calls with sales leaders to monitor how everything was going, whether the forecast calls were actually happening, how successful they were. And when NLP generated call transcripts really took off, when that technology was starting to mature, they decided to basically place a bot on each call instead of a RevOps professional, and then just query the call transcripts to understand basically the success of the forecast calls. And with a big enough sample, they were able to apply some machine learning to understand what successful forecast makers were doing differently than those that often miss their mark. And they use these best practices to then retrain their sales leaders, and are also starting to implement some checks that alert sales leaders that your forecast might be off for this or that reason. So they started the process by wanting to cut down on idle time wasted, sitting on these forecast calls, and then built on top of these systems with machine learning, because they saw that suddenly they had access to a new kind of data that was generated by call transcripts that previously just lived, disconnected in different RevOps reps' heads.
Yeah, I think this works well for organizations that have tons and tons of structured meetings, like these quarterly business review meetings, monthly forecast call meetings, where it's highly structured. You've got the same agenda, and you can pretty quickly and effectively train a generative AI tool to extract the right information from those. You're certainly going to miss things here or there, but it's instead of having a RevOps person sit on 50 calls a week, or multiple RevOps people sit on 50 calls a week, frankly, probably bored out of their minds and missing things because they're having trouble keeping their eyes open. You can train a generative AI tool to capture the information that you need and feed it back to management. So it's a pretty effective tool. Go ahead.
I think also what's an interesting use case here as well. So not only the internal processes of running our forecast calls, but being able to use AI-enabled call monitoring to try to tease out themes that are happening within the underlying sales process as well, and bringing those insights to the forecast call, for example. Here we use AI-enabled call monitoring to help us surface, what competitors are popping up in some of our calls, or within certain components of our sales stages, where are we seeing some of the gaps and whatnot. And it's reduced a lot of the manual work that we as a RevOps team have to go through and listen to every single call, or try to tease that information out of managers. And then we're essentially creating at scale insights to the various components of our sales process, and then bringing that information into our forecast calls to be able to summarize at a higher level, like what are some of the trends and themes that we're seeing. So I think there's absolutely the use case of like how we're running our calls, which is creating efficiency, so we're not just having to sit there and listen to a readout, but then it also helps with the inspection of what's happening under the hood across your sales process, which is important to bring to the forecast calls and make those more effective as well.
Exactly. It's like another voice in the mix to say, hey, it's a voice in the mix that's really, really aware of what's happening within the entire funnel, what's happening, aggregating insights from emails, from call transcripts with clients, and bringing some of that challenge to sales leaders to say, your forecast is a little too optimistic, or you're actually more likely to close this than you think.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I'm passionate about forecasting. We definitely could run super over just talking about forecasting and the use cases here, but I do want to take an opportunity to answer some of the questions that are coming in from the team that's listening in. But before that, I want to say thank you Deima and Davis for sharing the research with this team, walking us through some of those use cases as well. I found it super insightful as we were prepping, and then even sitting here listening to the two of you talk through it, I was taking notes on the side of some of the things we can use here internally. With that, we do have a couple questions that have come in. We're picking them up, not any sort of prioritized order, so I'll take an opportunity to read it off, and then would love some input from the two of you in terms of how you're seeing this play out and some of the clients that you're talking to. The first one is, what are some of the recommendations for effectively fostering cross-functional collaboration in AI projects? So for example, getting buy-in from finance, HR, sales leaders, marketing, CX.
Yep. Yeah, we talk about this a lot with our clients. The first thing that you have to do, taking a step back before you even do cross-functional collaboration, is identify what your specific problem you're trying to solve for, and determine whether it's just a broken process or the process is working, but you can actually step on the gas with AI. Or maybe you don't have this capability today and you're trying to inject the capability with AI. You got to be really careful that you're not just trying to automate or AIify a broken process, because if you do that, then you get a broken automated AIified process, which is frankly useless. So that's step one. Step two is get executive buy-in. You've got to have, with any of these AI projects, you've got to have somebody that's at a senior level who works across different functional areas, supporting it and pushing the agenda through the organization. And then the third thing that you want to do is sort of begin the requirements gathering and start to understand what's the scope of what you're trying to do and what different organizations need to be involved. And the next thing that you want to do is establish the business case for change and start to share that around the different organizations and think about what value it brings to them. So it's a partnership. If you're talking about marketing, sales, and service, it's a partnership. You need the data from marketing to make this thing flow. If it's a lead scoring or opportunity identification tool that's ultimately going to be used by the sales force, but you need to make the business case for why it's going to improve outcomes on the marketing side as well as the sales side.
Deima, any thoughts from you?
Completely agree with Davis. I think from a lot of the companies that we've talked to, they already have a sort of centralized AI tackling team that's very cross-functional, and their representatives across different teams that are already looking into a variety of different AI use cases. So it's really a matter of identifying and collaborating across these different organizations to understand what is a tool or a use case that's going to be scalable to apply to get some returns across all the different organizations. So
makes sense. I think one of the key takeaways for me, Davis, that you had mentioned that definitely resonates is around that requirements gathering phase. So when I think about working cross-functionally quite a bit, and if there's initiatives that I'm leading, is really understanding what are those cross-functional teams, like what is their input, what are they trying to achieve, and what are ultimately then the requirements that are needed for each of those teams. When we deeply and accurately represent those, and that's not I just go and interview somebody once. I'm typically sitting down, taking a first pass of the requirements, revising them, and going back. That's where I've seen cross-functional collaboration, especially within AI-related projects, have a lot more success, because we're solving for the deep-rooted pain point and the outcomes that they're looking for as well. That is it for our time today, everyone. I appreciate you all taking the time to join us. Davis, Deima, again, thank you for sharing your time, your insights, your information with the entire team today. We appreciate you taking the time, and I'm looking forward to doing this again, making some bold predictions maybe next year, and then seeing where we land.
Yeah, it's great. No, thank you, Andrew, and CaptivateIQ team. It's been great working with you. Thanks everybody for attending as well.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.